When it comes to Audrey, it is a little bit bizarre, but as you come to recognize the lead character, Ronnie's desperation in order to get back the life that she thought she would have, you become very forgiving with what could be considered to some people it's flaws, even though some characters they may leave some things to be desired. So to summarize the film, for all of Ronnie's life, she wanted to be the kind of actress who gets to call herself an artist. But between marriage, a mortgage, 2 kids, unfortunately her career kind of became stagnant, and at this point she's now teaching acting instead of being just a plain old actor either on the big screen, TV, or else on stage. But while she is not pursuing acting, she is trying to push her daughter to do so, the title character Audrey, and in many ways you can see she's trying to live vicariously through her. Unfortunately though, in the effort to do this, she neglects her younger daughter Nora, who has cerebral palsy, and it seems like her relationship with her husband Cormac is also being neglected, which is why when something happens to Audrey, it is almost a reset when it comes to the family dynamics. So comes the question of whether or not Audrey is an asset or a liability for this family's future. So get into the review section. When it comes to what we get with Audrey, I would definitely say Ronnie is a character who is easy to misinterpret or see in a bad light until you really get to figure her out. For in her desperation to kind of take over her daughter's momentum, you see this woman who has to be at least in her 40s, try to pretend that she's 17 going on 18, and there's a little bit of delusion in that. But at the same time, what I kind of see when it comes to Ronnie is that sort of nightmare scenario that a lot of women seem to have when it comes to having kids, in terms of having to give up so much in order to do right by your kids. And when it comes to Ronnie, between her trying to give it all to Audrey, still gives something what's left to Nora, who has medical condition, and then try to find something left for her partner in Cormac, you can see there's not enough time, there's not enough energy, and so she can only really focus on one thing at a time and have to neglect the others, to the point where not only are those people unhappy, but she's unhappy as well. And just watching her go through the emotions, this sense of desperation in order to try to reclaim some sense of purpose outside of what she can give to her family. In some ways, even though Audrey is very much a comedy, it almost feels like a horror in how it shows a worst case scenario of what could happen to a person, be it a mother, father, whichever, and what could happen when you give it all and forget yourself in the process. Getting to the next highlight, it's definitely going to be Nora's storyline. For a while, Nora is very much a supporting character. At the same time, you don't see a lot of characters with cerebral palsy, never mind ones who get to have a sort of coming of age type storyline. For with Nora, she benefits in some ways from being Audrey's sister, but at the same time you can learn most of her stuff is through Audrey, and with that there is this sense, especially as she wants to get into fencing and become part of the Paralympics, there is this desire to break off and have her own thing. Yet at the same time, when something happens to Audrey which kind of removes her as a factor in her life to a certain degree, you see her get to experience some of the privilege and other things that Audrey takes advantage of, in some ways isn't necessarily grateful for, depending how you want to look at it. And when you get to see Nora kind of get those opportunities and make her mistakes and get a little bit messy with what she decides to do, it just reminds you of how much you can take familiar stories that have been done over and over again, bring some type of diversity or inclusion to it that's not usually seen, and it can feel all brand new because now there's a different angle to see it from. With Norge, even if it's not in a major way, because this doesn't start her, just seeing a different angle of how she handles boys, how she handles rejection, how she is someone who is not that happy, make the best out of thing kind of person who has a disability, but she's someone who has a smart mouth, cusses, has an interest in sex and all that. It makes her the type of character that you hope gets to be seen more and not just relegated to these type of roles where they're part of the ensemble, but they're not front and center. So the last highlight bus is definitely going to be how much you're going to love date Audrey. And I want to just preface all this. Audrey is 17 going on 18 years old, so her being selfish, it makes sense, especially considering the way that Ronnie has doted on her and tried to live through her. So of course she's going to have this ego and attitude about her, which includes talking any kind of way she wants to Nora, her father, etc. But even with that in mind, there's this sense that with Audrey that, I guess in comparison to Ronnie, you get to understand because she didn't get to do certain things in life, because her life kind of hit a stagnant point after a certain bit of it, her flaws, her eccentricities, you're more than willing to forgive those. With Audrey, her talking to her mom and really digging in the knife the way she does, the way she talks to Nora, even if she does one time defend Nora against some of her friends saying something that is very uncouth, at the same time, she doesn't get that full development of being a 360-degree character. She still feels a little bit two-dimensional to the point where your dislike of her doesn't evolve into you understanding or really taking note that she's a 17 or 18-year-old. If anything, you look at her more like those kids on Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory where, yeah, they may be kids, so you don't necessarily want to see them get mortally wounded, but you wouldn't mind for them to get their comeuppance in some type of way, which leads on the fence topic. And that's just when it comes to Cormac, he feels a little bit like an outlier. For when it comes to Ronnie, when it comes to Nora, you can see that part of what's holding them back from being fulfilled, having a sense of self-actualization, for lack of a better way of putting it, is in many ways Audrey being at the center of their lives. With Cormac, it doesn't really seem like Audrey is really that affecting to his life. So with that, he feels a little bit too much like an outlier. And then when you add in what he does, just on his own whims, as much as the film tries to fill in the blanks toward the end of the film so that you understand why he did certain things when it comes to his desires and stuff like that, it can potentially feel too little too late, if not just making him more out of place than he already was. So he's one of those characters that you're gonna feel a little about. But overall, when it does come to Audrey, it's one of those types of films which has a lot that could have made it seem like so bad it's good in a campy kind of way, but I feel like there's a unique balance to it. Ronnie definitely kind of has this off-the-rocker vibe to her that's very comedic, yet at the same time it kind of triggers this feeling of Natalie Portman and Black Swan in terms of her trying to take somebody else's life, their career trajectory, what have you, and live through them in order to get some of that for themselves. When it comes to Nora, you get this unique perspective, since you don't see a lot of people like Nora get to have coming of age stories, and with that the film gets a little bit more to really stand out and be worth seeing. And yes, I'm not that fond of Cormac, nor am I that fond of Audrey, but while Cormac remains very firmly someone who's kind of at the very least, Audrey is built to be someone that you love to hate, and at the best thing that actor can do is give you some type of emotional reaction. And when it comes to how Audrey's performed, she's going to do that for you. Hence why when it comes to Audrey, if you're able to rent it on demand, maybe buy it if you're someone who enjoys any of the actors involved, this should be on your list.